Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Earlier this session, I believe it was Representative Bruce Williamson introduced the chaplain of the day, and he said, "I have known him all my life." Well, today I'm going to turn this around, and I'm going to say that I have known him all of his life. Now, I know a little bit about this fella. He comes from a good family. Now, his mother is a good woman, I guarantee you. But I've been told that there are a lot of people that think the jury's still out on his dad. But for those of you who don't know, this is my son. Before I tell you a little bit about him, let me introduce his family. Of course, the good woman that's his mother is my wife, Debbie. She's here. Stand up, Sarah, his wife, is here. Jasper, his son, is here. Layla, his daughter, is here. Barrett, his son, is here. And Duncan, his son, is here. Will you guys stand up, okay? And Barrett and Duncan are going to be paging for us today as well. So they call this group the Nix Six. So we've got the Nix Six with us today. Jess was in the 6th grade when we moved to Georgia from Alabama. Jess graduated from LaGrange High School. He went on to Samford University in Birmingham to graduate there, and then he went on to the University of Alabama Law School where he has his degree. When Jess was in law school, and for a while after he practiced law, he was the pastor of Briarfield Baptist Church in Briarfield, which is just south of Birmingham. Since that time, they have become members of Vestavia Hills Baptist Church, where Jess is the chairman of deacons. I know he's held a number of different positions in the church there in leadership, but now he is chairman of their deacons. Over 7 years ago, he and Sarah started a new class for young adults, and that class became one of the fastest growing classes in their church. The thing I'll tell you about Jess is Jess will not use the literature that they give to him. He writes his own Sunday school lessons every week. So I would say that he probably spends more time doing that than most pastors do preparing their sermon. Jess is a real student of the Bible, and I think he proves that you don't necessarily have to be in the pulpit every Sunday to have a ministry and an impact on lives. And I can't wait to see what he's got to say for us today, so let me present my son, Jess Nix, as chaplain of the day.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen in this honorable house, Dad, people in the gallery, thank you so much for having me here. It's a true honor to be here, and it's a double honor to be invited back to do this. I did this about 13 years ago. This is the first time that my family's been here, which is a terrific honor to be able to be here with all my children, none of whom were born the last time. So thank you. It's a wonderful day for me, and I just want to share some of that joy with you. Today I want us to think a little bit about the roles that we all have. You know, Dad was saying I was a pastor. He was kind enough not to say the church I had was a church of about 6 people. So we were not a very large church. We were a very close church. The youngest member of my congregation besides my wife and I was 50 years old. And I will say we have kept up with them. We love them dearly. Then when I left that church and went to the church I go to now and started a Sunday school class, we started from scratch, and we've got, close to 40 people on roll. So what I've learned is I'm apparently a much better Sunday school teacher than pastor. And I'm okay with that. Sometimes God uses us in different roles than perhaps we would like. Sometimes he makes us more effective when we take different positions than if we got to pick them, when we let him pick them for us. So today, I want to talk to you a little bit about one of the roles that you all play. It's one that you all know well, but I bet it's not one that you hear too much talked about. So I am a lawyer by trade, so I want to begin by reading Article 1, Section 1, Paragraph 9 of the Georgia Constitution. I'm sure you can all quote it. That that guarantees that the people have the right, quote, to apply by petition or remonstrance to those vested with the powers of government for redress of grievances. Now, to put that in just plain old English and to tell you how it applies to you, the people of Georgia have the right to complain to you when they think something is not right. And, you know, when you think about it, that means that the mayors of the communities in your districts have the ability to ask for your help in getting state funding for a local initiative. It means that local business leaders can help your assistance in working through a permitting issue. It means that environmental activists can ask you, could you please help them clean up a state park? I'm sure that you get all those requests, and I'm sure that we all recognize that your help with those requests makes your district and this state a better place. We can all appreciate that. But that's actually not what I want to talk to you this morning about. I want you to think about some other requests that you get. And as you know firsthand, the right to petition in the Georgia Constitution does not restrict who can petition, nor does it restrict what they can ask you to help them with. So the reason I know that is through phone calls with my dad. These calls usually start with my dad asking some sort of very deep question about the law. He'll call me up and say, Jess, got a question. Is it really true? I'm just giving an example that didn't really happen, but it could have. Is it really true that you cannot wear pink underwear to duck hunt in South Georgia? And I'll talk to him and I'll say, well, Dad, number one, I don't give out free legal advice, so take it for what it's worth. Number two, if you get indicted for this, I guess I'll try to represent you. But, after I clear that, he tells me, well, I didn't figure it did, but somebody asked me. And he'll say, somebody, one of my constituents asked me that question, and I felt like I needed to just double check that I was not missing something. And I'll assure him that he was not. And I bet that we could spend all day swapping stories between all of you for requests that you've received from constituents. Requests that perhaps didn't make the greatest bit of sense and that you probably didn't have the ability to help with. But requests that you receive nonetheless. Now, I want you to think about what you do with those requests. Because I'll tell you the one thing, and I don't want to give him a big head, but one thing I admire Dad for is he responds to them. He will actually email or call or write back to everybody who makes a request of him, whether it makes any sense or not. And the reason I know that is because my mother and I will look at him and say, what are you doing? You don't need to respond to that. You have nothing you can do to help. Not only do you have nothing you do to help, it's clear that whatever has been asked, it doesn't make any sense. And he doesn't listen to us. And he responds anyway. And I just want to draw your attention to those kinds of requests. To think through those times when you get those requests, and guess what? They're not going to help your district. They're probably not going to help you get elected again. They're not going to get you a vote. They're not going to do much of anything. But there's somebody out there reaching out to you, and they're asking for your help with something that they think is a problem. So with those ideas in mind, let's think a little bit about some of Jesus' ministry that we know about. So if we start with the Gadarene demoniac, we're told from Luke that he was naked and he had no home to go to because he lived in the tombs. And Mark chimes in that he could not be bound even by chains and that he spent all day cutting himself. And Jesus reached out to him. And Jesus brought him back to the fold, so to speak. Let's talk about the famous woman at the well. So Jesus, when he goes to talk to her and they're talking about living water, he says, go get your husband. And she says, I have no husband. He said, you're right. You've had 5. And the man you're living with now is not your husband. And Jesus sits there and he talks to her and he meets her needs. Let's remember a little more broadly that one of the complaints about Jesus from the religious leaders, from the people who held power, was that he was always eating with tax collectors and sinners. He was associating with the people you did not associate if you were one of the people in power. And let's remember that Jesus' response to that is that it's not the healthy that need a doctor, but the sick. And that he came not to call the righteous, but sinners. And while I recognize that Jesus had a divine ability to heal and to intervene in situations that none of us have, I think that it would be an injustice to think that his ministry did not take a toll on him. That even reaching out to these people wasn't difficult for him. If you look after the big events in his life, so let's take the feeding of the 5,000. If Jesus feeds the 5,000, it says he withdrew to a mountain by himself. He needed some space. Mark 1 records that one evening after sunset, an entire town gathered at Jesus' door where he was staying, and he healed people of diseases and he drove out demons. The very next verse tells us that early the following morning, Jesus went to a solitary place to pray. He needed to get himself back in order. He was tired. He had worked hard. Additionally, I think we have to keep in mind that when we read about the things that Jesus did, we're given a snapshot, right? We're told Jesus reached out and healed this person. We're not then given that person's biography as they went forward. I think we know enough people in our churches, in our synagogues, in the places where we worship, who are very, committed on Sunday, and on Monday you'd never know it. And I think we can posit that human nature being what it is, even some of the people that were touched by Jesus went back to their old ways. He would say, go forth and sin no more. He didn't say go forth because now you will never sin. So even Jesus realized, and I think we can take it as a surety knowing human nature, that even the people that he would reach, that may be a temporary thing, and that they may go right back to where they were before. I think that's why we learn why we hear Paul say in Galatians to all of us, do not grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. And so this morning, I want to offer you that encouragement. Don't grow weary in doing good, and particularly don't grow weary in doing good to those constituents who bring requests to you that may make no sense, that you may not have the ability to help with. The Georgia Constitution gives those people the right to petition their government, and the constituents of your district have designated you the person that those people should report to. You have been put in a position to help those people uniquely. When I talk about roles, that is a unique role that you have. And then we take the example of Jesus and the people that he reached out to and the ministry that he had, and Jesus gives us all the example, he gives us the call, and he gives us the encouragement that whether it is the most powerful person in your district or the person that everybody else walks by, all of them are your constituents, and all of them have needs that you uniquely may be able to help. So as elected representatives, I hope that you will take that unique position and opportunity to serve and help the people that no one else will. And my hope and prayer is that you will make the most of it. So I hope that you will join me in prayer now. Lord, I pray your blessing on this body of elected officials. Give them wisdom as they wade through difficult and profound issues of law and public policy in their work in this chamber. Help them to be patient with and attentive to one another as they work together for the good of this state and their districts. I also ask that you guide them as they serve the people living in their districts. Encourage and strengthen them to serve all of their constituents, from the most powerful to the most overlooked. Give them compassion, understanding, and inspiration to never grow weary in doing good. In your name we pray. Amen.